So when we look at the last 5 to 6 months, obviously the big story has been the COVID-19 pandemic, and like most sectors, the Canadian pulse industry has had some supply chain disruptions due to the pandemic. Especially in the early stages of the pandemic, we had a very limited availability of shipping equipment, as the Canadian pulse industry relies on incoming containers from markets like Asia that are then refilled with pulses and sold around the world. But supply chain disruptions aside, the global demand for Canadian pulses has been extremely strong over the past 5 to 6 months, and that's reflected in the export data. We're actually in this crop year up about 40% in lentil exports and about 20% in pea exports compared to this period last year. So that's a real good news story for the industry amidst these uncertain times. That being said, we continue to face, Canadian pulses continue to face market access barriers in a number of markets, specifically in the Asia Pacific. So back in March and at about early April, the government of Nepal introduced an import ban on peas from all origins, and this ban was introduced without any prior warning, nor did it take into consideration shipments en route. So our industry is continuing to deal with that today. There's a number of shipments that were caught up in that and are being refused entry into Nepal. So we continue to ask our government, the government of Canada, to work with their counterparts in Nepal to get this issue resolved as quickly as possible. And of course, we continue to face barriers into India, which historically was our largest pulse market. There continues to be an unnecessary fumigation requirement, as well as tariffs and quantitative restriction policies implemented by India as they continue to strike a balance between high prices for pulse farmers and affordable prices for pulse consumers. On the fumigation requirement, Canada continues to work bilaterally with India to find a science-based solution that would allow Canada to get an exemption from this requirement, as we've proven that we can provide pulses to India that meet their quarantine requirements without the need for fumigation. But obviously this has been a very difficult process, as there hasn't been a whole lot of progress made on this since we had a commitment from both the Indian and Canadian Prime Ministers to solve this issue by the end of 2018. But in recent months, there's been some meetings between our Minister of Trade and her counterpart in India regarding the matter. So that's somewhat promising, and we hope that dialogue continues. And on the policy side, we've seen recently actually that India temporarily reduced their lentil tariff for all origins except the US. So what that shows is that India is willing to revise and lower these tariffs to control rising food prices. But what Canada and all pulse producing countries need to do now is work with India to ensure that there's some predictability and transparency in how India is making these policy decisions, so that it would allow countries like Canada to supply them with pulses when needed, and obviously allow our growers to make the best decisions ahead of the planting season. And we also feel that it would help India in ensuring food security and price stability in their own country. So that effort is being led internationally by the Global Pulse Confederation. Pulse Canada is involved in that, as they partner with government groups in India that are involved in setting ag policy. And what the GPC is doing is bringing together all pulse producing countries in an effort to try and improve the trading relationship with India, which continues to be the world's largest pulse consumer.